sales is the precursor to us doing the work that we love the most. And so your ability to tap into your sense of drive and purpose and to master the skills around sales are going to give you an advantage in the marketplace and ultimately allow you to serve more people that much more effectively. Just a little bit of trivia for you, don't know if you know this, but prior to COVID, small businesses in South Africa accounted for 47% of the jobs in our country. And 70% of the businesses in South Africa fall under 20 million. Why do I mention that to you? Because you work with leaders in business. The impact that you have is a direct impact on the recovery of our economy as a nation. And I hope that you'll keep that in mind as we talk about some of the approaches and ways of thinking about sales. So I must confess, I feel a little nervous about leading with this slide. But this slide is the work of Dr. David Rock for those of you who have read the book Quiet Leadership. If you haven't read the book Quiet Leadership, then please write that down right now and get your hands on the book. Because ultimately, what Dr. David Rock is talking about in the book Quiet Leadership is how do you change behavior quietly? How do you shift behavior without lecturing, without shouting, without repeating yourself, and so on and so forth? For a moment, I'd like you to just park how this applies to your clients and think about yourself. All of us have some sort of a result that we want to achieve. That result may be to scale your practice, grow your revenue, free up more time, and of course, outside of the work environment, we have results that we want to achieve too. For example, I have been told that if I want to lose weight, I should move more and eat less. Right? That's a result. Now, here's the thing. There is a behavior that drives that result. And I've just described to you much of that behavior. It's not rocket science, knowing how to achieve many of the results that we want. And that, of course, is what you face as coaches every single day. You're working with people who know what it is that they should be doing, but often aren't doing it, so they're not getting the result that they want or need to get in their business or in their life. Why is that? Because below the waterline, we have a state, your mental, emotional, and physical state. And your state determines how you behave and what you engage in. So when we're not in the right state, we either engage in the activity poorly or without the vigor and intensity and drive that it necessitates, or we don't do it at all. So what is it that drives our state? That is our thinking. So before we talk about sales process and tools and automations and technologies and those exciting things, we've got to acknowledge that what is sitting behind the trap that many of us find ourselves in is the way that we think about the work that we do. I won't ask for a show of hands, but in an audience of this size, I know that there are people here who don't get excited at the idea of prospecting or selling. In fact, they'd much rather somebody else did that work for them, passed them the leads or closed the deals. And that's why we get so excited about working with channel partners and we get so excited about technology. And we will be talking a little bit about technology today. But at the core of it, your technology, if your thinking isn't right, you're simply going to bring your chaos into the technology. You're going to bring your limitations into the technology. So as much as we coach others, we ourselves need to coach ourselves, and in many instances, we need to be coached. Many years ago, somebody said to me that in order to see into a circle, you have to step out of it. We can't see our blind spots. That is the nature of blind spots. And you all know that every one of us has a blind spot. So I want to ask you today to reflect on what your blind spot is. For many of us, the blind spot is actually just reaching out to new customers. For some, the blind spot is around technology. For others, the blind spot is around the type of clients that they can or want to work with. Now, what happens is we focus on competence. We focus on teaching the skill, training. But anybody here who's got children, particularly teenage children, you know that teaching them what to do is not enough to get them to actually do it, right? Why? We hope that teaching the competence is going to create change. We ignore their state, and we forget that it is a change in thinking that will change our behavior. And when we change the way we think, our behavior changes permanently. And it's the same with your clients. So how do you change the way that you think? And for many of you, I'm giving you a tool that you can, by all means, go and use in your own sales conversations. Because this is essentially a big part of the sales pitch and conversation you need to have with your clients. How do you change thinking? Firstly, it's education. Formal education, informal education, ongoing education, that kind of, the education that happens when you, I don't know if you're familiar with the expression, there is more is caught than taught. So there's an education that happens by observation. But education is, of course, the foundation. But often education is not enough. So the second tool in changing the way we think is quality questions, i.e. coaching. It's what you do. Every day you work with people to shift their behavior, which will shift the results in their lives. And you're having an impact that you yourself possibly won't even realize or recognize. The third place where we can change behavior is through consequences. Education, quality question, and consequences. The problem is, if we don't own our results, good, bad, or indifferent, we don't learn the lesson. If my sales are in a slump, and I blame the economy, or I blame a competitor, or I blame a shift in technology, or I blame anything outside of myself, I lose my power. If I'm stuck constantly working weekends and early in the morning and late at night, and sometimes that is the way it goes, right? And if you're in a growth phase, I myself don't have children, but I've seen enough to understand that it's quite a rigorous process, this giving birth thing, right? You're not giving birth and then at the same time, studying online. It's pretty much an all-consuming endeavor. And in many instances, you might find yourself in a place where you're building something. Maybe you're building your website, or you're building a marketing funnel, or you're building your collateral and your proposal. You're building something, and in that time, your sales will suffer. It's a cause and effect. It's a consequence of diverting your focus. But outside of that, if you find yourself constantly on this hamster wheel, then I want to challenge you to take that as real-world feedback and a result. And it's a result that needs to challenge us to change the way we do things. So that's first and foremost. Before anything else, before we talk about technology or sales process, where is your thinking? Is your thinking serving you, or is it working against you? Where does your thinking serve you, and where does it work against you? Because it's not necessarily one state across the board. So with that in mind, what lies behind the metrics? So sales and marketing, we talk very much about the metrics. How many leads do we get? What is our conversion rate? What is our closing rate? What is the revenue? What is the ROI? And all of these metrics. And that's great, because ultimately, and what I love about business and why I didn't go into nonprofit, there was a time in my life I almost did, but I love the fact that revenue is the scorecard. I love that. It's an objective fact to say, well, that is the revenue, it's there or it isn't there, and that's a good scorecard. But if I'm only focusing on the revenue, I'm not likely to get there. I need to focus on what lies behind the metrics. In other words, there are activities that if I engage in those activities deliberately and consistently, will lead me to the revenue. Pretty much like what I said, if I was to move more and eat less, I might be able to lose those lockdown kilos, right? There's an activity. I can get on the scale every day and depress myself. Or you can look at your bank statement every day. You can look at your pipeline every day. You can call your fellow coaches and have a conversation and vent every single day. And you'll find yourself on a hamster wheel, repeating that process over and over. Going back to the analogy around weight loss, if I was to monitor what goes into my mouth and how many steps I do, then it's a cause and effect relationship. And in time, I would get on that scale and I'd be happy with what I see. And it's the same for you and for me. How many times are you reaching out to customers? How many times are you following up? The top performers in the world take an average of 5 outreaches to get a meeting. Top performing salespeople who focus only on sales. The average in terms of salespeople who, again, focus only on selling, they're not delivering, the average is 8 times that they reach out. How many of us are guilty of reaching out once and never again? In networking, the average follow-up, and this I learned from Helen Nicholson at the networking company, the average follow-up is 3% after receiving a business card. We've got to become more intentional about engaging in the activities behind the metrics. So, at the Sales Council, we believe that it is the right of every person to do work that they're proud of, for clients they're invested in, and to be rewarded for the process. To do work that we're proud of, for clients we're invested in, and to be rewarded for the process. So how do we frame that, or is the framework that by which we bring that message to the market? Firstly, what you need in order to achieve that is you've got to have clarity. Now, this may sound obvious, but many of us are operating in varying degrees of chaos, let's be honest, depending on the day of the week or the month of the year. So we're going to go into more detail around each of these, but you've got to be clear on your position in the market and which customers you're going for. The second is you've got to have the conviction. Now, as salespeople, there's something we have in common with coaches. Not all salespeople are created equal, and neither are all coaches. Can we agree on that? If I don't have the conviction, I'm going to lack the intensity that is required for me to convince and persuade my client. I need to believe that the service and the education that I can deliver to my clients is superior to the competitors. Now, here's where we have it. I don't want to say easy, because in my industry, as in your industry, I've got some very good competitors, some strong contenders. But there are others out there that I wouldn't want them to work with anybody that I cared about. And understanding that and allowing yourself to feel the emotion and to foster that conviction is going to give you an advantage when it comes to pursuing those customers and ultimately in being that much more persuasive. And then finally, it's competence. It's the skill. And the culmination of that is true confidence. We all know that confidence can often be quiet. Confidence is not about, it's not arrogance, it's not loud, it's not about being extroverted or introverted or anything like that. Confidence is the quiet knowing and assurance that you are able to achieve what you want to achieve. So let's just look a little bit more into clarity. I love this quote: clarity and simplicity are the antidotes to complexity and uncertainty. Many years ago, a colleague that I worked with, his name is Alan, he said to me, Shelley, I've observed something about you. You think about yourself in binary terms. I said to him, could you say that in English, please? He said, you think about yourself in a black and white kind of, you're either good or bad, you're productive or lazy, you're intelligent or stupid, you're successful or you're a failure. And he said, that's not how life works. You're a dial, not a switch. And at any given point, you can become aware of where you are and you can change your direction. You can change your direction at any point in your life. You can change your direction at any point in your year. You can change your direction at any point in your day by simply becoming aware of it. So if we are finding ourselves, as we run our practices, at a place where we're overworked, overwhelmed, where we're feeling chaos, perhaps where we're under cash flow pressure, where we're working with clients that are draining the life out of us, that we don't enjoy working with, and perhaps are not best positioned to serve, we can become aware of that and we can begin to take corrective action that takes us in another direction. And it's the same with selling. So for anybody who thinks, I don't really love selling, or I'm not particularly good at it, every person has the ability to improve on it. Or for those of you who say, you know what, I'm really good at this, I've got this nailed, let's not become too complacent, because we can easily slip into some sort of a decline. So what do we need to become clear on? What kind of offer do you bring to the market? Specifically, what is your position? Now, why do I say that? This is not about a marketing conversation. I'll leave that to an expert like Nico. Marketing is not my game. It's not what I know. But what I do know is that I cannot sell to a customer who doesn't own the problem that I am uniquely positioned to solve. But if you love sales and you love revenue, then it's hard to argue against the benefits of conscious capitalism. Let me just put that caveat there. You've got to get off your blessed assurance and go out there and provide value. And that's why what Nico is going to share with you later today is so important, because he's going to teach you how to take the value that you can add and scale that so you can reach that many more people. And when you have that conviction and you understand the purpose and the value that you bring, you're going to find the energy to get out there and deliver the value that is going to bring you the revenue. So why should your prospect use you and not somebody else? Do you really believe that you are best positioned? And this is why I really strongly caution you against going for business that's not your kind of business. If it's not the right client, if it's not the right problem that you're going to address, you're going to find yourself caught in a hamster wheel, and you're going to find yourself depleted of energy. Because you're going to lack the conviction that is required to push through the pain and the challenge at times in serving those clients. And this comes to technology as well, folks. You know, when I was 2017, I remember this day of being particularly frustrated trying to learn how to do an email sequence on MailChimp. And I just wanted to, I'm not a technology person, and I thought, you know, all my limiting beliefs and concerns and whatever came up, and I was so frustrated almost to the point of tears. But if I didn't learn how to do that, I couldn't talk to the people I care about. And so that conviction is what brought me to push through that. What are the consequences of not working with you? If you don't know, you can't teach them. Competence. When clarity, conviction, and competence work together, you can expect triumph. So, some competence you need, which you're going to learn from Nico today, is marketing and positioning, consultative selling. And there, the technology of Next9 gives you a distinct advantage, because you can actually you can focus on the consultative selling and let the technology do the heavy lifting for you. Your ability to stay focused. You're a dial, not a switch. The Pareto principle applies to how you spend your time too. If you're clear and you're approaching the right customers, you can spend 20% of your time on prospecting and selling and expect that to yield 80% of your results. How do you build and maintain a healthy pipeline? And we're going to give you some tips on that today. Can you demonstrate ROI? And folks, we're in the same boat here. All right, companies hire us for sales training. They say, well, can you demonstrate the ROI on the sales training you're going to deliver? And of course, you and I know that there are a number of external factors that we have no control over. But you can start to build your third-party credibility. Now, this is really important. When people hear the term salesman, there is a picture in their mind. When people hear the term life coach, is there a picture in their mind? Is it always flattering? Not always. You have to differentiate yourself from those that are in the market that are operating at, you know, below par, below standard. And we know that there are a lot of people out there. There are people out there who are going to coach with no qualification, no experience, and so on and so forth. So you need to work on establishing your credibility so that you can get your client to believe in you. If you have a look at my LinkedIn profile, I have got 51 written recommendations. Why? So that customers know that I have a proven track record of recent work that I've done, unsolicited feedback from customers that speaks to the value that I've brought them. Now, I'll tell you something else about how I started my business, and for anybody who is starting their practice, perhaps this will be of use to you. When I began, I was doing presentation skills, and there's a guy called Sibulela Xusa. He was a Harvard graduate rocket scientist. Lisa, you know him. And I watched him speak on stage in front of 4,500 people, and he was good, and that story was fantastic, but his stagecraft needed a bit of help. So I approached him, and I said, Sia, I would like to help you with your stage presence. And I'm not going to charge you. But my request is, firstly, you treat it as paid appointments, and secondly, if I add value, if, and only if, would you give me a recommendation? He went on to go and speak at a conference at Discovery. One of the leaders at Discovery saw this big shift in him. And they asked him what happened. How did this happen? And he said, here's the card of the lady who helped me. That went on to open doors for us with Discovery, where we've done work with them for probably 7 years now, many times over. I needed that credibility, and I was willing to trade for it. You know, there's a lot of negative press around working for exposure. And they say, oh, people die of exposure. But the fact is, if you need the credibility, what value could you bring to somebody's life in exchange for which they could give you some good credibility or introductions or positioning? You need to compile compelling proposals. And I'm going to show you some tools on how to do that. You need to manage the implementation process. Again, where the Next 9 technology can help you. You need to learn how to grow existing relationships. So we often get so busy that we never go back and look at our existing clients. So we don't know the 20% that's going to bring us the greatest revenue. So we don't know where to focus. And folks, what I'm going to share with you here is something I'm guilty of too, because I run my own business. When I get too busy, I neglect the relationships in my life. But all of us are where we are today as a consequence of a series of relationships. I'm here today because of Lisa. And Lisa and I connected on a social media platform. We hadn't met. We were able to relate to some challenges we were going through, and we just started a conversation. And then one day, when they lifted the gates for a little bit, I went and met Lisa, and we had a cup of coffee. And, you know, as a consequence, I'm here today. Nico. I met Nico, 5-6 years ago at an event, a B&I event in Joburg East. And we fostered a relationship. And now we're working with him on a whole series of videos we're doing for one of the big mobile providers in South Africa. Relationships are the gold. And all of us are guilty of neglecting the relationships when we get too busy. So here's a tip for you. Take your Outlook calendar or your Gmail calendar, whatever you use, and identify the 5 activities that are how you would measure yourself in your role. Now, one of the activities that I know I need to do is ongoing networking and fostering relationships. So what you do is you create those activities, and then you color code them and label them. Don't just make colors and rely on your memory. Color code them and label them. What you've done is you've turned your calendar into an infographic. Many people only use their calendar to mark the meetings that they're having. That's like trying to manage your budget only by, you know, the predictable day-to-day expenses that you have, and never, you know, budgeting for entertainment or travel or anything like that. You're going to very quickly become overdrawn. We find ourselves on this hamster wheel because we're not actually budgeting our time. So instead of using your calendar only for your meetings, what you should do is turn your calendar into an infographic that tells you how you're actually spending your time. So I have a color that is purple for fostering relationships. After today's meeting, I'm going to go and have a lunch with somebody down the road, a fantastic copywriter, and that is in my calendar, and it's purple. Now, it's not a sales appointment. It's just a meeting between 2 human beings getting to know each other so we can understand what the other party does and possibly look at synergies. But here's the thing. If I don't see the color purple in my calendar for 4, 5, 6 weeks, I can tell you what my pipeline will look like. Guaranteed, because it's cause and effect. So turn your calendar into an infographic that gives you real-world feedback on how you're actually spending your time. And become good at garnering referrals. And the time to do this is when somebody spontaneously expresses to you the value you've added. You know, to just go and go and call 10 people and say, sorry, do you know anybody that could use my services? Do you know anybody who could use my services? Do you know anybody who could use my services? Is not going to yield you much success. But if somebody says to you, wow, Wayne, that was a great conversation we had. That really shifted things for me. That's the time that you say, thank you so much for that feedback. I really appreciate it. Do you know anybody else that could do with that shift too? Because I'd really value an introduction. What you're essentially doing is you're saying, and when the person is in that state of gratitude, you're saying, is there anybody else you would like me to serve with the same value that you've benefited from? And how often does that happen? That's also, by the way, you ask your LinkedIn recommendations. Or if you do any work for exposure. If you do work for exposure, trade. I would be happy to do that work for you. But my request is that you would give me a recommendation at the end. And then maintaining momentum. And this is where the technology can really help you. So question. What are the things that what are the 4 biggest delusions that human beings have? Human beings believe that we're great lovers. I've never met anybody who said I'm bad in bed. We think we're great drivers, and we think we're great communicators. That should be 3 biggest delusions. My apologies. Have you ever met anybody who says I'm a bad driver? No. But look around the streets of Johannesburg or wherever you may find yourself, and you'll see that there are many people who are not, in fact, the best drivers. We're not going to comment on the first one, because that, of course, is subjective. But it's the same is true of communication. When communication fails, we blame the other party. In sales, when you do that, you miss the lesson. When communication fails in sales, you need to take that as real-world feedback and determine for yourself, why is it that this endeavor failed? So the Graduate Management Admission Council of 2017 said that these are the skills that employers are hiring for. Oral communication, written communication, adaptability, presentation skills, ability to value the opinions of others, cross-cultural sensitivity, integrity, delegation skills. Most of us think we're good at this. Here is a message that I received. I don't want to disclose this person's name, but if anybody asks me to show you the evidence, this is true. This is an actual message that I received on Facebook it was either earlier this week or the end of last week. I can help you to double your income in the next 3 months with more motivated clients without paying for ads, funnels, crazy software. Do you have room in your calendar for more clients? If so, reply yes. If not, no. If there's anything I can do for you in the future regarding growing your consultancy, please let me know. Now, the problem is I don't run a consultancy. He also asked me if I have time in my calendar for more clients. And like you, I'm also escaping this hamster wheel. So right now, and of course in a few months' time, who knows, right? But right now, that's not our primary problem. He began this message by saying to me, I hope you're not the kind of person who likes long, lengthy, rapport-building conversations. And I hope you're the kind of person who just likes to get to the point. Now, because I'm in sales, I will always reply, I try to always reply to a sales message because I believe it's a professional courtesy. And because I'm in training, I'm going to give you the real-world feedback whether you like it or not. So I did reply to this person and say, actually, I'm the kind of person that believes in first establishing that there is a problem that you can address. And I do believe in building some sort of a relationship before you do so. Here are 3 websites that you can go and have a look at to see what it is that I do. Folks, this is really important for us to understand. And what I'm going to share with you is true for you and for me, and it's true for your clients too. All of us are trying to do more. We're trying to work faster. We're trying to consume more information. And many times in my humble opinion, it's because of that thinking that's at the bottom of the iceberg. I think that I must in order to keep up so I don't become irrelevant, so that I don't become redundant, I don't lose customers to the competition. But we've got to become more selective so we can slow down and do what we do well. If that gentleman sent 200 of those messages in a day, I don't know what his conversion rate was. But I can guarantee you he would have done better. He would have been more effective if he had sent personalized, contextual messages to the right people. When you have the spray and pray approach, you can't follow up. And remember what I said, top performers, people who are only selling, not delivering, are taking 5 outreaches to get hold of a client. So how do you do that without being predictable? Here's the thing. So first and foremost, and this is Dale Carnegie, right? I think it was Dale Carnegie who said it. Be interested rather than interesting. Be interested in people. So this is why you have to guard your cash flow with your life. Because when you are under financial pressure, we demonstrate behaviors that are not our best self. When your back is against the wall, you become needy, pushy, aggressive, direct, blunt. You don't demonstrate the empathy that is needed. But when you have margin, when you have financial margin, you can give somebody the right advice. You can tell them that you'll reach out in 3 months. And you can do it with the energy that gives that person the assurance. Now, here's the thing, guys. Nobody wants to work with an unsuccessful coach. I'm sorry. It's the same that's true of sales training companies. Nobody wanted to work with a startup, right? I had to go out and build that credibility in order for me to get those referrals. So even if you are starting, you've got to create as much margin for yourself as you can so that you can breathe and treat your customers and the work that you do with the reverence and attention that it requires. You know, during COVID, my husband was in hospitality. He was retrenched, and I had to laugh. We had a conversation, it was a Thursday evening, and we had a conversation around, do we really need 2 cars? And I said to him, no, it doesn't really make sense. We don't really need 2 cars. But it was an intellectual conversation that we were having, and in theory, And he agreed, no, we don't need 2 cars and whatnot. And the Friday afternoon, I was doing work for an American client. So it was late on the Friday afternoon. At about 3:30, he said to me, are you sure that you're comfortable for us to have 1 car? I said, yeah, of course I'm sure. I mean, we spoke about it yesterday. It makes absolute sense, doesn't it? I came out of my training at 5:30, and we had 1 car. He subsequently joined me in the business, which, by the way, in our case, I've been very fortunate because we've got complementary skills. He's the complete opposite of me, and thank the good Lord for that, okay? But here's the thing. By selling that car, and we had a big brass bed that we also sold to buy a camera so that we could do some recording at the time. We created financial margin for ourselves. And it was that financial margin that allowed us to create Africa's first remote selling school. So be selective about what you're engaging in and which tools you're going to buy and use. Make sure that what you are using is addressing a real constraint that is seriously going to help you deploy to your customers that much more effectively. And you're not doing it for the vanity, and you're not doing it because it looks good. And if you are in a birthing phase or a growing phase or a startup phase, it's vital that you create that margin for yourself. You also need margin in your pipeline. We'll come to that in a moment. Sales process. So folks, sales process is often misunderstood. We think that a process is an operational system on which step you should do at which point and so on and so forth. And that is true. Having a sales process allows you to make your business scalable. So if you have a VA, or you get to a point where you get a VA, or you have an administrative team, or you have social media help, or whatever the case might be, having a sales process means that they know what to do at each point. And that is certainly helpful. But your sales process has a much greater value if you use it effectively. You see, your sales process tells you at which stage your customer is in the buying. So essentially, your sales process should mirror how your customers buy. A bad sales process, and we've all been through this with a bank or some retailer, right? You want to do things a certain way, and they're forcing you into another channel. And that creates friction for you. How do your customers buy? Think about that, and then engineer your sales process to match how your customers buy. Now, most sales processes would go something like this. There'd be a qualification, then there would be a discovery, i.e. just talking about the problem. Then there would be a design. Then there would be a proposal delivery, and you would then get to negotiation, and you would close that deal. That's how most processes would work. When you understand your process, you begin to understand how long it takes from somebody. So in our case, because we work with big corporates, our sales cycle is very long. The project we've just finished for one of the banks that we've done took us 18 months before the project began. You need to understand your average sales cycle if you want to have cash flow margin. Because if you don't understand how long it takes you to conclude a deal, you're constantly going to think, this one's going to close now, this one's going to close now, this one's going to close now. You're constantly going to be frustrated when that doesn't happen, and you may in fact sabotage your deals because of you're trying to drive that urgency. Alternatively, you may decide to be totally passive and say, well, it's only going to come off in 6 months anyway, so they'll get hold of me when they need me. And neither of those is going to work. You need to have the appropriate amount of contact with your customer. If you understand that process, you're also going to understand what needs to happen at each stage. So if we think about the leads that come in, how did they find you? Or how do your customers find you? Is it website? Is it referral? If it's referrals, then I really want to urge you to pay attention to your LinkedIn recommendations. Go back to your customers and ask the ones that have given you good feedback. And sometimes what happens in our business is they'll send us an email. And I'll reply and say, thank you so much. Or I'll go into LinkedIn, friend them. I'll say, thank you so much for that email that you wrote with this message. I put it in quotation marks, copy, paste. Would you mind copying and pasting this into a recommendation for me? I'm not even asking them to rewrite it. If you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see that I've got recommendations where my name is misspelled. It doesn't matter. It's honest. And because I know that so much of the work that I get is referral business, I have invested in that tool. Why did they reach out? You might want to know at this point, what is the size of their organization? So you can use technology to help you to qualify your deals, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. One of the biggest problems of every type of salesperson is we spend too much time pursuing the wrong kinds of prospects. So Next9 has made a tool available to you after today's session that is a deal qualification template. And you can customize that template to suit yourself. Don't go and completely change it because it has been built on a particular science of understanding whether or not the customers own the problem, how many relationships you have inside of that account, is there a time urgency, is there a chance they could do this themselves, is there a real cost of not doing anything. You need to understand all of these to understand the likelihood of that deal actually closing. And many of those questions you can ask early on in your discovery, and I'll give Lisa some copies of these that you guys can distribute next week. But you want to establish BANT. BANT is budget, authority, need, and timing. Can you afford it? Do you have the authority? Is this a real need or is it a nice to have? And if it's a real need, what's the timing around this? You need to update your opportunity on your CRM system. Now, if you don't have a formal CRM system, again, they're making a tool available for you, which is just an Excel spreadsheet that can help you to track your opportunities. You must track your opportunities. Folks, two things. One, if you don't track your opportunities, you've got no idea what your cash flow is going to look like. But the other thing is, and this is a mistake I made in my business, I wish I'd started doing this sooner. Every opportunity comes with a company name, email address, decision maker, and telephone number. That's your database. That's your asset. If you don't track your opportunities formally, you don't build that database. Confirming your customers' expected desires. You guys can read through this in your own time, but these are things that would need to happen at this stage. When it gets to design, now you have a diagnostic tool which many of your competitors don't have. Think about the opportunity that gives you when it comes to diagnosing and designing the problem that needs to be designing the proposal for the problem that needs to be addressed. Your proposal delivery, your negotiation, and ultimately contracting as well. So some things you should consider is social media automation. So when Nico inspires you today to start to really put your narrative and your story and your influence out there, when you come to grips with the content development side of it, look at tools like Hootsuite, and there's a whole host of others as well that can automate that for you. Calendar automation. If you haven't yet automated your calendar using Calendly or Mixmax or something like that, I can't recommend it highly enough. And actually what happens is I have my calendar link in my email. It gets forwarded. And twice, and I only started automating my calendar early this year, twice in the last 6 months, I've had people book time in my calendar for legitimate opportunities where I had never reached out to them. I didn't even know who they were. I just get this calendar invitation telling me I have a meeting with so-and-so, and it's by a client who has forwarded my email on to them. So you want to reduce the time for them to go from the decision to actually booking the meeting, right? Inquiry forms on your website, if you have a website. What is your inquiry form asking? Is it giving you the opportunity to also qualify your deals? Automated reminders. Folks, our customers are frazzled, fickle, and frustrated, just like we are. And cancelling a meeting an hour before can so easily happen. But when somebody sends you a reminder the day before with an agenda, telling you they're looking forward to meeting you and seeing your face on camera, it's a little bit harder for you to cancel that meeting. So sending those reminders and automating them is valuable. So understanding how you qualify your prospects, you guys are getting tools on this, and then the tools that you need. Sorry, it's frozen here. Aligning your capabilities with your client's challenges, we've discussed that. Investing in visuals, using proposal delivery tools. I'm going to share this with you in a moment. Okay, negotiation. Never, ever, ever negotiate on email. Never. I was on a call earlier this week with one of the big insurers and with the head of marketing, and she said to me, let's talk about price. Now, we'd had an unstable internet connection. And I said to her, if you don't mind, could we please put our cameras on? I don't want to talk to you about something as sensitive as pricing without you being able to read my expressions. This is literally what I said to her. Without you being able to read my expressions and without me being able to read yours. It's too important a conversation. Don't negotiate on email. Do it where the person can see you, preferably in person, but if not, on a video call. And when it comes to closing and the admin, don't waste time. Get it done. Get that invoice out. Okay, let's talk about pipeline very quickly. Your pipeline must be active and balanced. Your pipeline is the precursor to your cash flow, folks. So what does active and balanced mean? It means you've got to balance across the sales stages. So when you're starting off your practice, it's all going to be early on in your sales process. But as you build your pipeline, you want deals that are progressing right across. You also want a balance of sizes. You want big deals, small deals, and medium-sized deals. Why? The bigger deals take longer, the smaller ones come off quicker. You also want a balance of solutions. And this is particularly true for those of you that collaborate with other coaches. If the solution only falls on one person you're collaborating with, on yourself, you're not able to then work constructively with others. And a balance against your forecast status, in other words, when that deal is going to close. Here you can read through all of this information after today's session, but essentially tells you how do you know when it is, in fact, an active pipeline. The deals must be progressing. There must be activity that's taking place. How do you recognize an unhealthy pipeline? It's too thin. You need to have a minimum of 3 times the coverage that you need. In other words, if your target is to do 100,000 Rand a month, you need a minimum of 300,000 Rands worth of opportunities a month. Now, after COVID, we strive for 5 times. And there's no downside to that, right? So what we did with COVID was we really tried to increase that margin. You don't want them to be top heavy. It's too many early stage opportunities, too many that are coming off late stage that tells you need to get more involved in your prospecting, or that's bloated. Some tools that you can look at to automate this process and make your life a little bit easier, and the team will be sharing links to these tools with you after today's session. I'm not an affiliate. I'm not endorsing these. I'm just saying they're available. Some of these are really, really good. So reply.io is a tool that allows you to automate your LinkedIn outreach. Be careful. Remember the warning that I showed you earlier. Be selective, make sure you get the message right, and use the automation tools to leverage your influence, not to ensure that it doesn't undermine it. But it allows you to automate that. It allows you to automate some email responses. It also allows you to warm up your MailChimp email address so you get greater deliverability rates. Octopus also allows you to automate your LinkedIn outreach. You can automate endorsing others. You can even automate looking at other people's profiles. Hunter is a really great tool. Simple. It's not expensive. I think it's $7. and it allows you to find the email addresses of decision makers in companies you want to work with. Calendly, and there's others. There's Mixmax, there's Book Meetings, there's a whole host of others. If you don't have a formal CRM, use something like a Trello or Asana or Monday. We use Monday, so now you can use it as a project management tool for your entire business, but you can have a board on there for your CRM as well. Flipping Book is a really nice tool that allows you to digitize any PDFs that you have, so it actually becomes an interactive PDF with hyperlinks. It also can give you a capture form at the end, so if you have a brochure that people share, they can actually at the end subscribe or put their details in to reach out to you. So it's a really, really fun tool to use. For designing your solutions, you've got tools like Miro and Mural. Now this is one I love. Has anybody but me ever spent an entire weekend doing a proposal? Man, oh man, that can be hard work. So Better Proposals is, it's around $20 a month. It comes with beautiful templates. They have got coaching templates. I specifically went and had a look yesterday. When you send your proposals, you send them using Better Proposals. Why? Because it tells you when the proposal was opened. It tells you if it's been forwarded. And every single time they read your proposal, you know. So if you send the proposal on a Tuesday and you see they've read it on Thursday morning, oh, what a coincidence. You just happened to call on Thursday afternoon. Isn't that fantastic? There's another one called Proposify. It's got a few more features, a little bit more expensive, but they're both very, very good. On negotiating, there isn't a tool, but here's what I can tell you. This is a fantastic book if you've never read it. It's called Never Split the Difference, written by an FBI negotiator. When it comes to invoicing, folks, there's a whole host of them, and finance is not my area of expertise, but we use Xero. You can use QuickBooks. If you're bad at it, make sure you have somebody else that can compensate, because that will really put you at a disadvantage. So let's summarize. You've got to have the right mindset. Again, I feel a little humbled sharing this with coaches, but I know that all of us can fall into our own trap at times. You're a dial, not a switch. Maybe you need to get around another coach, somebody that you can soundboard these things off of. Gain and maintain clarity. After today, I want you to go and have a look at who are your top 20% of your clients that are likely to give you 80% of your revenue. Make sure that you're intentional about fostering relationships with those individuals. Foster conviction. It comes and goes, so you need to foster that conviction. And when you find yourself depleted and you find yourself not feeling the intensity and passion and vigor that perhaps you once did, get around the right people, go and engage in the right activities that are going to drive up that intensity for you again. Develop your competency. You see, in that sales process, some of you are going to be stronger in some areas than other areas. So I did the Marcus Buckingham's Strengths Finder, and one of my strengths is meeting new people. I think they call it the woo or something. And I love meeting new people. But I tell you what, when it gets to the end, contract phase, I'm terrible. That's why my husband joining the business was the best thing ever. I mean, every single contract is, he always gets the signed copy back. It's saved in the right place, and there's a printed copy in a fireproof safe. I'm not even joking. So think about where you're strong, identify where you're weak, and either develop the skills or get the tools or get the people around you that are going to help you to compensate for that. Because across that sales process, there are going to be areas where you're strong, there are going to be areas where you can be strong, and there are going to be some areas in which you're going to need help. Design and refine your sales process. Your sales process should deliver an experience to your client. Maya Angelou, people don't remember what you did, remember how you made them feel. Well, customers have a feeling when they meet with you. They have a feeling when they leave the conversation with you. What is that feeling? And how could you craft that experience to shift that feeling? Leverage the right tools. Don't be seduced by every new tool that's out there. Look at the constraints in your business and select the tools that are really going to shift the needle, and then apply yourself to learning those tools. Maintain a healthy pipeline. Please look through the notes that you're going to receive after today's session so that you can build an active and balanced pipeline. If you build an active and balanced pipeline with the coverage you need, you will succeed. It's a cause and effect. How do you do that? And perhaps another day we can talk about prospecting. But ultimately, it's about ensuring that you're engaging with the right people, addressing the right problem, and communicating it in a way that they're able to resonate with you. Qualify your opportunities. Not every referral, not every lead, not every opportunity is the right opportunity for you. Do not become the equivalent of Jim Carrey's yes man as a coach. You'll deplete yourself. The customers that are right for you will suffer. You're not going to be able to apply yourself to leveraging the tools and technology that you can. Have the coverage you need in your pipeline. And finally, make sure that you stay on top of your marketing efforts. Build your brand, build your reputation, and build your credibility. And if you feel a little bit humbled and you don't want to get your name out there, I want you to remember that your unwillingness to increase your visibility is leaving your clients vulnerable to those who cannot serve them with the intention and nobility that you can. That's what gets me past myself and on video. In lockdown, I was doing quite a lot of Facebook Lives. And I did it. I don't like what I look like on camera. I don't know anybody who does. Ask Nico. I mean, even professionals he works with doesn't like what they look like on camera. You know what? I don't think it actually matters to anybody else. My self-awareness is not what matters to them. We've got to get out of our way so that we can serve those people who need us the most. And remember that the root of sales is selan. It means to help and to add value. So let me close with just this little story. I come from Port Elizabeth, Alberta, Nelson Mandela Bay. And I wanted to move up to Johannesburg and open my business for many, many years. And I had a mentor down there. His name is Jerome. And I would have these sessions, mentor before I had a coach. I suppose it was actually coaching that was happening if I think about it now. But anyhow, and I said to him, I would keep raising this topic about moving to Johannesburg, but I never quite got there. Then one day he turns around and says to me, Shelley, have you ever been to Camps Bay? I'm thinking, oh, he's not listening to me. But of course I want to be polite, you know. So I said, yeah, I've been there. He says, have you ever looked at those houses? Those 3-story houses. They've got these extremely steep driveways. At the top of those driveways, if you have a look, you'll find that there are yachts. Massive yachts that were crafted by master boatsmen. And the thing is, those yachts sitting at the top of that driveway, gravity itself would seek to bring those yachts down. And that would be good because at the end of the driveway is the Atlantic Ocean, the environment for which they were crafted. He said, what is it that keeps that boat up the top of that driveway? I said, I don't know. He said, it's called a chock. It's a tiny little wedge that they put beneath the wheels. And that little wedge is enough to keep this massive, beautifully handcrafted boat from defying nature itself and fulfilling its purpose in the environment for which it was designed. And he said to me, Shelley, what is your chock? What is keeping you from fulfilling your potential? Because it's got nothing to do with your design. It has nothing to do with the environment. Nature itself would seek to see you fulfill your purpose. But something is keeping you stuck. 2.5 months later, I was up in Johannesburg. That chock is a constraint. Next 9 can help you with one of those constraints, and it's a big one. That can help you to fulfill the potential in your business, in the environment for which you were designed and created. But what they can't do is eliminate the chock in your mind. That is the work that you do with others, and it's the work you need to do with yourself. I hope that I've inspired you to reflect on that and to eliminate the chocks in your life so that you can go and do the work you were designed to do. Thank you.